ready to start? Okay. Good morning. This is Kathy Evans. I'm a member of Clouds Creek Baptist Church in Oglethorpe County, Crawford, Georgia. I came to this church after moving from South Georgia. I have an interest in history and genealogy, and I find both rich in this church. We have a lengthy history of our founding. It came to be back in the 1700s, started at a fort. It was Fort Olive, and it was built about 2.5 miles north of here. And that fort, being a stockade back in the 1700s, families would seek shelter there, the pioneer families, and from Indians and from the British. And they developed their own community, and they brought their religion with them, which they practiced. And from that, they built a church. They moved it 2.5 miles south at this location, and they used some of the timbers from the fort when they built the church. In 1908, that church burnt and was rebuilt. And we do have some of the timber from the original church that was used in some of our sister churches in the area to help them get started, some of the old beams that they could salvage. So the wood from the original church has been dispersed in other churches also. So that is quite a flavorful history that we have going on. Some of our founding families are presumably, because we cannot identify their graves, but our pioneer cemetery adjoining the church has some of our founding family members in it. And I say presumably, the Historical Society has allowed us to say that's where they're buried because of the records that we have. Although those graves have long since been disturbed through nature and through just trees growing, weather, the ages, we can identify some mounds that are possibly grave sites, and we have stone markers over some of those, but they too have been dispersed just through deterioration. The wooden markers for most of the planters have disintegrated. The enslaved people that were here with these families were also buried there. They attended church here, and they are listed in our rolls of members. And so we do have quite an extensive history. Founded in 1788, the Historical Society, with the work of several citizens that love our community and love our church, got us a marker out front by the road, which is quite an accomplishment. They don't just hand those out because you're old, you have to document it. There's quite an investigative process that entails. And they were able to get us a marker for our church. It's lots of hoops, and you have to dot all your I's, cross all your T's. There's quite a review process. It's not just handed out because of your stated oral history. You have to document it. It was donated property, so it was easy to build, and it was more centrally located, I guess, out of, I don't know if perhaps they wanted to farm that or whatever, but it was agricultural area. But
their original location?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. The fort was built, and it was cleared land around it, which they did cultivate because they had to have food. The area initially was populated because after the Revolutionary War, of course, we didn't have income tax and our government had no source of revenue, and they could not pay all the soldiers that sacrificed so much for the Revolutionary War. Not only our national, founding fathers, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Adams, all those folks, they nearly went bankrupt. A lot of the families did because of the war effort, and we all know that they were underclothed and supplied because there were no war chests. So what they did, unfortunately, relocated and took over the Indian land, the Creek and the Cherokee, and they had a land lottery. This land lottery had two barrels. One was a section and one was a lot. And when your name came up, they drew one out of the barrel to say what section you were in. They drew another one out of the barrel for a lot. So you knew what property you were going to get. And these soldiers were, through the land lottery, came because they were given land in lieu of payment for their war service. So that's how they encouraged pioneers to come into Georgia, the ones that were not already here. The ones that were here previously probably were ahead of civilization. And I say that because Jeremiah Cloud, being a trapper from North Carolina, came into this area, and he claimed several of our local creeks as his creeks for trapping. And pelts were very plentiful. They brought a good price, and that's how he made his living, and they were called Clouds Creek. And it's a lot of little contributories that have changed, I'm sure, with progress, but they're still here in existence, and they still offer wildlife fishing, and we still have beavers and a lot of the things that he may have trapped. So it's kind of interesting how we've grown off of all of that history. We do have in our Pioneer Cemetery James Warren Coyle. He was a 15-year-old soldier of the Civil War. Of course, he was too young, but he still was compelled to join the war effort, and he is buried there, and you can see his crypt. That's one of the only recognizable ones that we have out in the Pioneer Cemetery.
J.W. Coyle, who was born November 14th, 1849, and departed this life July 8th, 1865, age 15 years, 7 months, and 24 days.
We have some of our community leaders that make sure that he gets recognized with flowers on his tomb, and they keep it clean. He's a white family member, and we do have Coyles that are members of our church today. Yeah.